It was supposed to be a peaceful day. I had just settled into my porch chair, a fresh cup of coffee in hand, enjoying the rare quiet that came with living outside of the HOA's jurisdiction. No ridiculous rules, no Karen breathing down my neck about mailbox aesthetics, just me, my land, and the open road. At least that's how it was until Tom came storming up my driveway. "Jake, they've lost their damn minds," Tom panted, his face red with fury. I raised an eyebrow, setting my coffee down. "Who's they?" "The damn HOA," he practically spat. "They put down spike strips." I blinked. "Come again?" Tom threw his hands in the air. "They installed actual metal spike strips at the neighborhood entrance. Some nonsense about preventing unauthorized vehicles." I stared at him for a second, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. I exhaled sharply and stood up. "All right," I said, grabbing my keys. "Let's go see what kind of stupidity we're dealing with this time." It only took one look for me to know that Tom wasn't exaggerating. There, right at the entrance to the neighborhood, gleaming metal spikes were embedded in the road, ready to shred any tire that dared cross without the HOA's blessing. A small control box sat nearby, and next to it, standing like he was guarding a military checkpoint, was Greg, the self-important HOA enforcer in his knockoff security uniform. I stepped out of my truck, crossing my arms. "Tell me you didn't actually do this." Greg smirked. "It's a safety measure." "The HOA board approved it," I scoffed. "On a public road?" Greg shrugged. "We consider it part of our community's protected area. Non-HOA members have been speeding through here. This keeps them out." Before I could respond, the universe decided to prove a point for me. A sedan turned onto the street, its driver completely unaware of the trap ahead. The second their tires hit the spikes, pop! Pop! The front tires exploded. The car lurched to a stop, and the driver, some poor middle-aged guy in business casual, stumbled out, looking pale. "What the hell?" he shouted, staring at his ruined tires in horror. "What just happened?" Greg didn't even blink. "You should have read the new HOA guidelines." The guy's jaw dropped. "I live here." Greg pulled out a clipboard, flipping through pages with fake authority. "Then you should have registered your vehicle. No HOA sticker, no clearance. That'll be a $250 fine for unauthorized entry." I let out a slow breath, rubbing my temple. "Oh, for the love of..." "This is illegal," I said, stepping forward. "You can't just install tire spikes on a public road." Greg smirked. "The HOA board says otherwise." Right on cue, Nancy Wilkins, the HOA president, arrived in her expensive SUV, stepping out with a forced smile. "Sheriff Carter," she greeted, her tone dripping with condescension. "I assume you're here to ensure our new safety initiative is running smoothly?" I crossed my arms. "I'm here to make sure you don't get sued into oblivion, because that's exactly what's coming." Nancy waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, Sheriff, let's be reasonable. We're simply keeping the community safe. There was an incident last month where someone drove 10 miles over the speed limit. We can't have lawlessness." I raised an eyebrow. "So instead of calling law enforcement, you just booby-trap the road?" She smiled. "It's been very effective." I exhaled through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. No point in arguing with crazy. Instead, I casually pulled out my phone. "You know what? I think I'll let the county commissioner and a few attorneys weigh in on this." Nancy's smile faltered just a little. Greg's confidence wavered. Good. They had no idea they just picked a fight with the wrong guy. I wasn't going to waste my breath arguing with Nancy and Greg. People like them, they only back down when they're forced to. And I was about to give them a lesson in exactly how much power they didn't have. 1. Digging up the truth. Back at my office, I fired up my computer and pulled up the county's property records. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for, and just as I suspected, the road wasn't HOA controlled. It was county owned and maintained, which meant the HOA had zero legal authority to install anything, let alone tire shredding spike strips. But as I kept digging, things started looking a whole lot worse. I searched for formal complaints against the HOA, and what I found was enough to make my blood boil. Residents had been issued bogus fines for things as petty as grass half an inch too tall or porch light wattage too bright. Multiple homeowners had been threatened with foreclosure over unpaid fees that kept mysteriously increasing. Some residents moved out after being financially bled dry, and their homes were suddenly scooped up by HOA-approved investors. This wasn't just HOA overreach. This was a full-blown extortion racket. I knew these types. They weren't just trying to enforce community rules. They were deliberately forcing people out so they could profit. And I wasn't about to let it continue. Setting the trap, I needed more. Hard evidence. So that night, I set up hidden surveillance cameras near the spike strips. If they were doing something shady, I wanted it on video. And sure enough, I hit the jackpot. The truth comes out. Sometime around midnight, a familiar figure sneaked out of his house. Greg. He walked up to the spike strip control box, looking over his shoulder like some kind of wannabe secret agent. In his hand, a clipboard. He flipped through the pages and started checking license plates. Then, like clockwork, when an HOA-approved car drove up, the spikes retracted. When a non-HOA car approached, the trap stayed active. I clenched my jaw as I watched. They weren't enforcing safety. They were running a scam. By selectively trapping non-HOA members, they were forcing people to pay fines just to live in their own homes. And the worst part? Some of those people probably thought they had no choice but to give in. But now I had undeniable proof. I had footage of Greg manually operating the system. I had a full list of rigged license plates. And best of all, I had a paper trail of where all the money was going. I smirked. Tomorrow morning, the HOA was in for one hell of a wake-up call. 1. The fall of the HOA police. Morning came and I didn't waste any time. By 8 a.m. sharp, I rolled up to the HOA's little headquarters with a full team of officers, lights flashing and sirens blaring just enough to make a scene. If these guys wanted to play cops, I figured I'd show them what it looked like when the real ones showed up. Greg and his little squad of fake enforcers were right there in the parking lot, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world, completely oblivious to the fact that their time was up. I stepped out of my cruiser, arms crossed. "Morning, boys," I said casually. "Hope you got a good night's sleep, 'cause you're gonna be spending a lot of time behind bars." Greg's smug grin disappeared instantly. "What?" Before he could finish, my deputies moved in, cuffing him and his goons right there on the spot. "Greg Simmons, you're under arrest for fraud, extortion, and destruction of county property," Carter announced. "And trust me, that's just the start." Greg started thrashing like a fish out of water. "Wait, you can't do this. We were just following HOA policies," I smirked. "Yeah? Well, county law trumps your little rule book." That's when Nancy Wilkins stormed out of the HOA office, heels clicking furiously against the pavement. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. I turned to her, holding up my phone. With one tap, the video played, clear as day, showing Greg manually controlling the spike strips, targeting non-HOA members. Nancy's face drained of color. Oh no," she whispered. I paused the video and looked up. "Oh yes," her mouth opened and closed, searching for an excuse. "Sheriff, I can assure you, this was merely a misunderstanding. Greg acted on his own. The HOA board had no idea." Carter stepped up beside me, waving a stack of financial records. "Well, Nancy, this says otherwise. Seems like HOA fines weren't just paying for community improvements. They were lining your pockets." Nancy took a step back, shaking her head. "I need to call my lawyer." I gave her a mocking nod. "Yeah, you do that." Then I turned to the crowd of onlookers. As of this moment, the Pine Grove HOA is officially under investigation for fraud, abuse of power, and financial misconduct. The gasps and murmurs from the residents spread like wildfire. And then, things exploded. 2. The residents revolt. The news spread like a brush fire in the wind. By noon, the scene outside the HOA office looked like something straight out of a courtroom drama. Reporters arrived, shoving microphones in faces. Neighbors gathered, furious, waving stacks of bogus fines they'd paid over the years. An elderly man stepped forward, shaking a stack of violation notices. "You people stole from us. I had to take out a loan just to keep my house." A younger woman held up a tow report. "They took my car 3 times, and every time they charged me more just to get it back." Nancy backed toward the HOA building, trapped. A burly guy in a flannel, who I knew as Bill from down the street, crossed his arms. "So, Sheriff, what happens now?" I smirked. "Well, Bill, that's up to the residents, but if I had to guess," someone in the crowd shouted, "Dissolve the HOA!" The crowd roared in agreement. Nancy looked like she was about to faint. And I just sipped my coffee and watched the circus unfold. Natch 1. The HOA board collaborative meeting was held that very night. And unlike HOA's usual meetings where only a select few got to decide the rules, this time everyone had a voice. And the vote? It wasn't even close. 93-2 in favor of dissolving the HOA immediately. Those 2 votes? Nancy and her one remaining crony, not that it mattered. By the next morning, the residents took action. The spike strips? Gone. Ripped out by a group of angry homeowners with sledgehammers. The HOA office boarded up, all operations shut down. The ridiculous HOA rules burned in a fire pit at the neighborhood barbecue. The reign of HOA terror was officially over, and honestly, I had never seen a group of people so happy. At 2, Greg and Nancy get what they deserve. Greg's charges kept piling up: property damage for the spike strips, fraud and extortion for the fines and fake enforcement, threatening residents, because let's be honest, that's all HOA police really did. The last time I saw him, he was sitting in the back of a patrol car, looking like he just realized prison didn't come with an HOA-approved amenities package. Nancy tried everything to save herself. She threw Greg under the bus immediately, claiming he was responsible for everything. She hired a lawyer, insisting it was all just one big misunderstanding. She even tried to play the victim. But it didn't work, because when the financial records came out, turns out Nancy had been skimming off HOA funds for years. Her bank accounts? Frozen. Her property assets? Seized. The HOA's money? Returned to the residents. Nancy's last words before being escorted away: "This is so unfair. I built this community." "Yeah, sure, lady. Try explaining that to a judge." Nash 3. The neighborhood celebrates its freedom. That weekend, the biggest neighborhood barbecue in history took place. No more HOA fines, no more ridiculous rules, no more Karen-style dictators, just good food, good people, and the sweet, sweet taste of freedom. At one point, someone proposed putting up a sign at the entrance: "Sheriff's Territory, no HOA allowed." The whole neighborhood laughed and cheered. I just shook my head, chuckling. "I think we made our point." Someone nudged my shoulder. "Come on, Jake, admit it. You're a legend now." I smirked, taking a sip of my drink. "Nah, I'm just a guy who doesn't like bullies." Because at the end of the day, HOAs, fake cops, power-hungry board members, they all have one thing in common. They think rules make them powerful, but the truth? Justice always wins.